And now to the tragic crash of that Air India flight. Video shows the plane barely leaving the runway before slowly sinking behind residential buildings and then crashing. There were 242 people who were on board the flight. Only one passenger, the passenger in seat 11A, lived to tell a tale about what had happened.
And somehow, as you're watching in this video, walked away from the crash site. The 38-year-old somehow escaped through the plane's emergency door. A miracle survivor now speaking from his hospital bed.
Everything happened in front of my eyes. I don't believe or know how I survived. For some time I thought I was also going to die. But when I opened my eyes, I realized I was alive and I tried to unbuckle myself from the seat and escape from where I could. It was in front of my eyes that the air hostess and others died.
He was the only person who survived on the plane. Journalist Vedika Sood steps away from the wreckage. She has the latest for us.
I'm standing on the terrace of a residential building in India's western city of Ahmedabad, where on Thursday afternoon local time, a Boeing 7878 Dreamliner crashed into that building right behind me, just meters away. That's the tail of the plane. All that remains on top of the building, nestled in a precarious position. That is a hostel for medical students. The latest on the investigations, we're being told that a black box has been recovered from the rear end of that aircraft. You can hear a plane go by. This was perhaps the same route that was taken by the ill-fated Air India aircraft that was headed to London. Now, telling you about the black box, a crucial piece of evidence that can help the Indian authorities who have launched an investigation into the crash. There are dozens of family members who are now thronging the hospital. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Friday morning local time, had visited this crash site and then went on to meeting the injured in the hospital. He even met with the sole survivor, the British national who had walked away from this crash site on Thursday. These families may have to wait for very long because the DNA samples being matched with the remains of their loved ones could take days or even weeks. Vedika Sood for CNN, Ahmedabad, India.
New video shows the moment a Boeing 787 Dreamliner crashed moments after takeoff. You see that new video there. We want to warn you, it's hard to watch because you know what happens here, but officials say one flight recorder has now been recovered from Thursday's horrific Air India plane crash that killed some 290 people. Investigators are now working to determine, of course, what caused this crash. This is the incredible part of that. If you're seeing that plane just explode there, there is a sole survivor. He's apparently a British national who was reportedly seated in 11A, according to his boarding pass. The Hindustani Times reporting he told them, quote, 30 seconds after takeoff, there was a loud noise, and then the plane crashed. It all happened so quickly. Dozens of others died on the ground as the plane slammed into a hostel housing doctors and medical students. The death toll still could potentially rise. With us now, CNN safety analyst and former FAA safety inspector David Susi. Okay, first of all the crashes you have investigated and all that you have covered as an analyst, how extraordinary is it that someone walked away from this crash, not only survived, but walked away from it?
It's just incredible. It's truly miraculous that this happened, and especially the fact that he was in 11A. Typically, survivors of aircraft accidents avoid the fireball part, which is be back in the tail. But to see that he was in 11A and having survived this, the only thing I can think is that it was because he was directly above the wing spar, which when the impact happened, the wing spar is the heaviest part of the airplane. So that impact is what probably saved him, the fact that he was above that heaviest part of the airplane.
As to the causes of the crash, there are several causes being considered here for this Dreamliner. A bird strike, double engine failure, flaps not being deployed. And I know you mentioned sort of noticing that the flaps didn't appear to be deployed yesterday. Are those areas that you would concentrate your investigation on?
Yeah, it's too early to tell, as we know, but as far as attacking the investigation based on the video, the fact that the flaps are not deployed is not typical. but it doesn't mean that it was a mistake. Flying out of Denver high altitude when it's heat, when it's a hot day, to put those flaps up on, at least on older model aircraft, you do that to try to get enough airspeed so that you can then take off. But so it isn't a counter practice or a bad practice, it's just a different practice. So I'm not thinking that's the problem at this point. But knowing that there's that loud bang, hearing that loud bang 30 seconds later would indicate to me that I would start looking towards the possibility of a bird strike.
Wow, yeah, because we heard that from the survivor that there was a loud bang about 30 seconds in. This plane went down less than a minute after takeoff. What is Boeing's role in this investigation? What do you expect from them?
Well, Boeing fully will cooperate with the investigation. They have people on site, I'm sure, at this point, and they're going to be part of it as far as the data box as soon as the black box is retrieved. Now, Boeing did design this aircraft with a lot more data points than any other aircraft prior to its time. So the data that's available to the investigators will be huge, and Boeing will be there to interpret that data to compare it to what is normal versus what happened on this flight. So they're very important to be part of the investigation for that reason, for comparing normal to the Delta, to what is happening now.
And that's a very important point, that there's going to be a lot of data points, and we know that a black box has been recovered now. David Susi, thank you so much for your expertise this morning.
And let's get some more perspective on the investigation. We're joined by CNN aviation analyst Mary Schiavo, former Inspector General at the Department of Transportation. Mary, it's good to have you back on the program now that they will have the black box to examine, as well as reports of that Mayday call by the pilot. What are investigators going to discover, and what are they looking for right now?
Well, it depends whether they got the cockpit voice recorder or they have the flight data recorder. On the cockpit voice recorder, they will literally have 2 hours of all communications that occurred into and out of the cockpit. Anything that could be heard in the cockpit is picked up by these recorders. There's one over the pilot and one over the co-pilot. If they have the flight data recorder, it does take a little while to download that data. It looks like computer data when they download it. So it does have to be downloaded, then interpolated. But that will have literally thousands of data points telling them how the airplane was operating. What were those flaps setting that has, those little winglets on the back of the wing, the trailing edge of the wing that helps the plane with lift. There's been a lot of criticism whether those were deployed or not. The flight data recorder will have that information. It will tell them about the performances of the engines, where the instruments were set. That flight data recorder will solve this mystery, I have no doubt.
Yeah, and just to clarify, it is actually the flight data recorder that has been recovered. The cockpit voice recorder they're still looking for. We know that it took about 28 hours of searching the rubble to find the flight data recorder. So as you point out, that will be crucial in terms of information. We know that India's aviation regulator has now directed Air India to carry out safety inspections on all its Boeing 787 Dreamliner, just the entire fleet. Is that pretty much standard procedure after a crash like this, an incident like this?
Well, yes, it is, because right now they don't know what occurred. And, given the problems that Boeing has had in the past, now granted, it was a different aircraft model that crashed in Indonesia and in Africa, but those were problems, and those crashes, in the end, Boeing was completely responsible. So to allow these planes to fly without an inspection would be unusual. Most aviation nations do that. Until they can rule things out, they have to make sure they've done all that they can. Now, the problem is also going to be, what kind of data, what kinds of things are they looking for? And remember, in January of 2025, a Dreamliner, while one has never crashed before, it was United Flight 613 in January, and the plane itself did a number of uncommanded things. It shut down its own autopilot, its auto throttles, dove the plane, etc. So the United States National Transportation Safety Board, which is part of this investigation now in India, already has an investigation ongoing onto some of the Boeing Dreamliner. Boeing's participating, Honeywell. So they've already got a good head start as to how to interpolate what goes on, the data, understanding the plane, etc. But yes, they should be looking at all of them just to make sure if there's anything that they can see right now that they can fix.